many people have had quite negative experiences with men. I think that's the thing we have to call out, not just women, but men as well. Like if you speak to any man and you ask them, tell me about your experiences with other men, at some point in their life, they'll talk about being bullied or being judged or not feeling like they could express themselves, feeling like they had to hide a certain part of themselves. Even the most manly man, who hangs out with men all the time and goes to the football and, does everything that a man should do in any particular culture, will have had some difficult experiences around other men that you might describe as toxic. So I think those traits have been well documented and well talked about. And that's where this perception has come from. And it's born out of genuine, real experience.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and with over 12 years of meditation experience as a mindfulness trainer and coach for high performers, I've become obsessed with helping people break free from compulsive, unhealthy behaviors and addictions and step into a life of true freedom so that they can finally become their best selves and cultivate deeper and lasting fulfillment. I've created Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast, to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to master your mind and optimize your life. This is Unhooked. Welcome back to the Unhooked Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, a men's coach, former monk, and founder of Unhooked Academy. Today's episode is a powerful and honest conversation with writer and entrepreneur James Routledge. He's the man behind the Substack publication Jack, which is a bold and refreshing voice on modern masculinity. In this episode today, we talk about everything from men's mental health, porn addiction, shame, and social conditioning to what it really means to reclaim your manhood in today's world. James shares his own personal journey, not from a place of being a guru or having all the answers, but from a place of deep inquiry, lived experience, and a commitment to helping men evolve, which I really respect and appreciate about his work. This is one of those episodes that might challenge you, encourage you, and hopefully invite you into deeper exploration of yourself and the men around you. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation, James Routledge. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Unhooked Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, today joined by my new friend, James Routledge. James, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. You are someone that I've been following for a while on Substack. You started writing about men and masculinity and issues that are just very relevant for men. So I'd love for you to just tell the audience, what is Jack and what is it all about?
Jack initially is my channel to talk specifically about men's mental health and masculinity. I wanted to create a voice and a character that could represent men and speak to men's issues. So really it's a platform for me to talk about all the different issues that men face through a brand and a character. I'm becoming increasingly aware of the depth and complexity of what men experience in the world and how diverse and varied that is. And obviously I can speak personally to some of the experiences I've had as a man, but I'm well aware that there are thousands of other experiences that men go through that I can't speak because I've not experienced them. So Jack is initially a publication that can, speak to all of them. So Jack's, in my mind, is a person. He's a universal man that can speak to the multitude of challenges and experiences and opportunities that men face today.
Mm-hmm. What caused you to start this whole thing? Was there something that you felt was missing from the men's workspace? Or? What was the initial impulse behind it?
Actually, the initial impulse is quite far reaching, I suppose. I mean, I've always had an interest in men's mental health specifically. So I'd previously started a business in the mental health space, and I'd been a male leader in that space and an advocate for mental health, but not specifically around men, just universal mental health. So I started a business called Sanctus, which was a pioneering brand in the mental health in the workplace space. And then when I sold that business, I then was spending some time out and, reflecting and thinking about what was next. And I remember actually I was in a sauna in a gym where I lived. And in the sauna, I would always just listen to the conversations that men would have. And anyone that goes in saunas regularly knows that that's where lots of real conversations happen. And in this sauna in particular, I just found it really interesting because lots of the older men would have conversations about like their health or their relationships. And I noticed that lots of the older men, their conversations surprised me. They were more affectionate and more kind and more curious than perhaps my perception of older men was. And then one conversation really stopped me in my tracks because there was a group of young guys in there one day, let's say early 20s, and they were talking about nights out and drinking and chasing girls. And one of them, in a very offhand way, mentioned that he'd been going to a brothel and paying for sex. And he just said it so flippantly and so matter of fact that it just really caught my attention because this was a young, healthy guy, in the gym with friends. And he then said a comment of, well, where else would I go? And that just caught my attention, kind of raised my eyebrows and made me want to investigate what was going on with men even more, basically. And yeah, I initially began writing a book called Jack the Lad, which is like a Bridget Jones's Diaries for Men. So I started putting that together as like a piece of creative writing and enjoying that process. And then this year, I thought I can't hedge all my bets on getting a book published. So I'm going to start bringing some of these issues to light and writing about what goes on under the surface for men.
Yeah, underneath the surface. I think that's a kind of a great phrase, that there is so much underneath the surface that we don't see on social media, we don't see on Instagram or in the workplace. And as you say, there are little glimpses of it sometimes in a sauna or, when two guys are getting together for lunch where they can actually have a deep conversation. But I think your publication really brings to light some of those issues. What are some of the topics you're most passionate about when it comes to men and masculinity?
I mean, in general, I'm passionate about men taking space and men really actually sharing their voice about their experiences. I think for a long time, men actually have repressed their feelings and not shared how they feel towards something or shared their version of events or their stories. They've been told, it's not what a man does. It's not strong to do that. Representing and showing your feelings is weak. Showing any vulnerability is weak. I think men have also read the message that, they are bottom of the pile when it comes to being allowed to share any of their agitations with the world. That other people from other groups must kind of come first. So, my overwhelming message is like, let's shine a light on men and your experience as a man. I get the sense that a lot of men go through life with this sort of background noise of these questions of what it means to be a man and masculinity. And, thoughts and feelings around that, but it's never in the foreground. It's always in the background. And I want to bring this into the foreground. So that's probably the overarching narrative that I'm passionate about. I think specifically, then the problems or the issues at the surface I'm most interested in is mental health broadly, alcohol, is a topic that's high on the list. Porn is a topic that's high on the list. Drugs, relationship with work, money, relationships, dating, body image. The list obviously goes on, but I'm putting some of those at the top because I think they're quite high up there. Alcohol's a big one, but then just general male culture as well, and questioning what is kind of normal for men to do together, and challenging that. And in particular, over the last months when I've been writing about men, I've noticed that probably the most impactful writing I can do is when I really focus on what men are doing well, and when men are coming together to do, to do something new or impactful or important, because I think so often we shine a light, society or the media shine a light on what men have done historically wrong, or badly. And that's created this negative perception of men. Basically, there's a lot of guilt and shame around what men have historically done to the world or to women or to each other. And, I think that story's been really well told. Yet what maybe we don't do enough is shine a light on the good men in our world that are, creating awesome podcasts for other men to heal, or men that are putting on retreats or sharing their story, or
just being like mentors to young boys and being good role models in their communities. I mean, there's so many silent heroes out there that are just kind of like being good people in their community.
Yeah. Exactly. So loads of issues that I know men face, and then also lots of really inspiring men that I believe deserve to get the headlines as well.
Yeah. On that topic, you've said in one of your posts that masculinity is stigmatized in its own way. And I'm wondering if you could unpack that a little bit. Like, what do you think people are getting wrong about what it means to be a man, or what masculinity means? Where's that stigma coming from?
I think we're very confused at the moment about what masculinity is, to be honest. I sometimes wonder how helpful, these broad groupings are as the masculine and the feminine. I understand the desire to have that kind of yin and yang balance of the masculine and feminine, and broadly, I think those categories are helpful guides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are guides. Like there's no definition of these things. Like we are human. Right. We get to decide it all for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes think the desire to define and label is quite confusing and unhelpful. Mm-hmm. But generally, people do seem to like the idea that there are broad categories of behaviors and values that are masculine and feminine. And that seems to be helpful to people. I think what is unhelpful at the moment is that the behaviors that people group as masculine are at the moment mostly seen as negative or toxic. That's the word that is used most, because many people have had quite negative experiences with men. I think that's the thing we have to call out, not just women, but men as well. Like if you to any man and you ask them, tell me about your experiences with other men, at some point in their lives, they'll talk about being bullied or being judged or not feeling like they could express themselves, feeling like they had to hide a certain part of themselves. even the most manly man, who hangs out with men all the time and goes to the football and, does everything that a man should do in any particular culture, will have had some difficult experiences around other men that you might describe as toxic. So I think those traits have been well documented and well talked about. And that's where this perception has come from, and it's born out of genuine, real experience. I don't believe we've unpacked those experiences enough. I don't think it's gone deep into, one trait of a toxic form of masculinity is, when men only banter with each other, right? And they don't actually say what they feel or what they mean. That can become quite toxic when it's constant jokes or shit chat or, mild to aggressive forms of bullying. That is toxic, and lots of men have experienced that. I think though, if we unpack that and we go deeper and deeper into that, actually for lots of groups of men, there's a desire to connect, and banter or, some of that chat that doesn't hit the point, really underneath that, there's a desire to connect, and there's often an inability to express feelings and emotion in a direct way. So yes, that might have felt toxic or created a toxic kind of culture that self-perpetuates. Yeah, I think if we truly understand the male experience, it's born out of some real feelings of fear and insecurity that need to be attended to. So, yes, some versions of masculinity have been toxic, and that's created this general perception that that's what men are. And that's not fair at all. Like, we need to understand why that culture has become prevalent, what happens, and start to take a look at what a more healthy and functioning culture around masculinity looks like. Because the general perception at the moment from women is that masculinity and men, and when people say toxic masculinity, they're basically saying men are toxic. That's what that actually means. And I believe as men, we need to reclaim that narrative and change how we behave with one another and how we behave to women and other people in our world, so that we can reclaim what it means to be a man and how we operate, and therefore our perception of masculinity.
Where would you recommend? Like, I'm thinking of someone listening to this who maybe hasn't been involved in a lot of men's work. They haven't, they're not in these circles, and they have had some difficult experiences with men in their life. Maybe they didn't have strong positive role models. Maybe they were bullied as a kid. Where would you recommend someone starting? Or are there certain books or resources? Obviously, publications like yours, but what is kind of the entry point for this kind of work?
I feel quite new to this space, to be honest. Like, I've only just really heard of the term men's work. Like, I didn't even know what men's work or men's spaces meant until recently. And I joined an open men's group a couple of weeks ago for the first time out of curiosity, and found it intriguing, and I'll be back. But I feel quite new to this space, and like many men, I'm only just recently looking at my own life through the lens of masculinity and what it means to be a man. And I think the journey, initially for me has started with some reading and finding, publications like yours, or just initially, actually, I found some of these kind of quite high level like statistics quite cool. I think there's a publication and an author called Richard Reeves who's written Of Boys and Men, which is, he's very much on like the policy angle, but it just made me feel like, okay, this is a thing that's happening to men and boys across the world. Like there is genuinely a societal problem that we need to take a look at. And that made me feel, I don't know, it gave me more permission to explore it. I think I then listened to an audiobook on Spotify called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which I've since realized is a bit of a classic. And actually a couple of years ago, I would have heard that title and thought, there's no way I'm listening to that. It just sounds so corny. And actually, I got a lot of value out of it. What else? There's a very famous book, that anyone who's been in this space for a while will know what I'm going to say, called Iron John, which is like a series of myths about men and masculinity. I found that helpful because I think the investigation, the exploration for me has been thinking about, okay, where do I get content, or where am I nourished in my life for me as a man? Whereas I think for the last 5 or 10 years, I've been on the journey of maybe that's been more well-being and mental health focused. And that's been me thinking, like, how do I nourish myself generally? And it's actually led me to lots of, and I'm going to go back to these broad groupings now, it's actually led me to lots of like feminine practices, yoga. Meditation isn't masculine nor feminine, but it's still, and it's gentle. It's not, I'm not fighting anything or I'm not expressing
beating drums around a fire and wrestling men and
exactly. And so I look at who I often open up to and speak to in my life. Can often be my wife. So I'm like, right, where am I getting my fix as man in my life? And that's, I think that question is quite a good place to start for anyone. It's like, where is my manhood being nourished in my life? I think I'm coming up with that off the bat, but I think that's been quite a helpful inquiry for me. Just thinking, where am I able to really express myself as a man? And that's led me to a really simple conclusion for me, which is, for example, like, I don't currently play any sport. I grew up playing lots of sports, and the competitiveness, the aggression, the desire to win in a playful manner that can be done in a sporting and, in a way that's just fun, rather than, again, this kind of nasty, bullish, I win, you lose, kind of way that it doesn't need to be. There can be like
healthy competition. There's a real joy in healthy competition from sports. Yeah.
And it can be honorable and, it can be fun and fair and dignified. And it's led me to think, where's that in my life? I need more of that. So I think that's just a really good inquiry to start, that you can journal on or write about and then do some reading around. And then in general, I do think personally, like, I'm on a journey of finding more spaces in my life to, really explore my masculine side. I think I've been on a real exploration of my feminine. I think it was a side of me that, I was never in touch with. Like, growing up, I grew up in an environment that was, heavily macho, and, to be a man, you conformed and you watched football and you drank beer and you spoke shit about girls in the pub. Like, that's the environment I grew up in. So that didn't work for me in my mental health, which then led me to really explore my more nurturing, caring side that took care of my health. And then now I'm coming out the other side of that, and I'm like, okay, I need to go back into the more masculine sides of me and find my own healthy version of that.
Yeah. Well, I think, as you're talking about this and you being relatively new to this space, I think it's one of the reasons that your writing really resonates, because it's clear that you're just speaking authentically about your own exploration with a lot of these topics that a lot of guys are exploring for themselves. Speaking of your publication, the post you did on porn addiction, I think is one of the most kind of grounded and relatable posts I've read on the topic. I think you really did it justice of just what that experience is like to come to some of those realizations. What led you to write that post specifically?
So I'd shared on my personal LinkedIn to my audience, what topics do you want me to write about? And I put 4 options. I think it was drugs, alcohol, porn, and wearing a mask at work.
Mm-hmm.
I just picked those randomly off my own insight. And then I think porn addiction was the most voted. Bear in mind, this is LinkedIn as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is a professional platform. Now, I can see who voted as the author of the poll, but you can't as a participant. So there is an element of anonymity for people, as long as they trust me as the author. And that didn't surprise me at all. I mean, actually, what that said to me is porn addiction probably won by a country mile, because there'll be loads of people that wanted to click it but didn't. Because I know the nature of the shame around that. So that was one reason. Again, when I was doing the creative writing and I was writing Jack the Lad, I really wanted to represent porn use in that book as in a way that was like relatable and maybe a bit funny and comic. And I just know how prevalent porn use is. Like, I'm 34. I think I first went on the internet at like 13, and I remember me and my mates all finding access to internet porn, and it being like, finding crack or heroin for the first time. And I just know, what the culture around porn is for at least, I'm in the UK. I know what that lad culture around porn use is, and I know how prevalent it continues to be as men go from boys to men. Like, it doesn't stop, basically. I think I thought it would. I think I possibly thought that, porn was like a thing that teenage boys did, or maybe into your early 20s at uni or something. And then, I'm 34 now, and as I've experienced what continues to happen, it made me realize, that porn addiction is a far, far bigger and deeper topic than, just like a bit of a joke, and like a laugh that maybe sometimes is when it's spoken about in groups of men.
Yeah. Was there a moment in your life where you recognized, where you made this click and realized, hey, this is actually causing some harm?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a bit of a journey. I think the way in for me was actually because I became kind of like interested and concerned around general behavior and treatment of women in society. I think that, I'd like to think I'm sensitive to that. And, I think the Me Too movement and lots of women calling out men for sexual harassment, abuse, rape. And that's, to me, it's quite obvious that that's the tip of the iceberg. That is representative of all men. It's a very, very small number of men that become predatory and dangerous to women. But what I'm well aware of is that underneath that is an entire culture of objectification of women that allows those events to happen. And I think it's very, very hard as a man. And I think it takes a lot to really honestly look at your own part in that culture and acknowledge that we have grown up in that. And I felt quite ashamed really that, that I've grown up in a misogynistic culture. It's just facts. And I don't feel as ashamed about it now because it's just true. Like, what else was I going to do? I was born into it. But yeah, I was born into an environment where my older cousin would have a poster of a half naked page 3 model on his wall. And then, you've got the porn industry. Me and my mates used to watch Soccer AM, which was a UK football show on Saturday morning where they'd make a young girl walk up and down an aisle in a football shirt, make her spin around and rate her out of 10. Like, that was on mainstream television at 10 in the morning on a Saturday. That's like the messages we're getting sent as young boys about how you talk to women and about women. So, I became aware of that culturally. And then it's as if porn use was like the most obvious thing I'd never noticed in terms of the link to that. Because,
it's very compartmentalized for a lot of people. It's just this thing that starts when you're 10, 11, 12, and it's this totally separate thing in isolation from the rest of your life.
Totally. I was just like, well, this is the ultimate, the ultimate tool to objectify women. Like, this is, this platform or this, this thing is literally, click on a picture or a link of a woman and, consume her. Right? Basically, that's what porn is. It's like, just pick what you want, consume it, and for your own pleasure, it's yours, And I suppose I made the link between that and what was happening or is happening in general society to women. So I'll be honest, I actually came at it from like not really thinking about the harm it was doing to me, but thinking about the harm it was doing to others, which I think is, I don't know. I think that's not everyone has that same journey there. And then also there was other stuff that's happened recently on social media. Like, for example, my Instagram reels just started to become absolutely full of basically soft porn, like OnlyFans creators. There's been this stuff recently around Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue, like these crazy stunts around, porn stars sleeping with 1,000 men in a day. And that's really broken out. But I noticed how porn was then bleeding into social media in ways that it had never done before. And I was just like, I don't want this. Like, this is not what I want. Like, I don't want to be on my Instagram where I go to watch like comedy videos and food videos and send Lord of the Rings memes to my mates. I don't want to see an OnlyFans creator sucking a lollipop, saying some shit about how she likes to have sex. Like, it's so debasing for me to consume that on a daily basis. It's like, I am so much more than that kind of content, when it's not the person I want to be consuming that, So, I think all in, like, loads of factors, and it's not just made me wake up to, how pervasive like porn is and how powerful its impact is on people. I mean, I never get the quote right, but there's a quote in like psychotherapy, which is something like, what's in the shadows is driving you, so what's in your shadow is actually what's dictating your life. And that really rings true for me about porn. It's like, it's a shadow, and I do believe it dictates a lot of men's outlook on the world.
In very subtle but powerful ways. I mean, a lot of men don't realize the ways that it's impacted their life. But, over decades of watching it, if you start when you're 12, 13 years old and you're, 2 decades in, it has a profound impact on how you view women, how you view intimacy.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And then started to speak to some more of my mates about it. And I think that made an impact, that made a difference as well. I mean, some, some men are not bothered, like they're, I don't know, they're ignorant or naive, or they're just, they've compartmentalized in such a strong way that they don't make the link to how it's maybe affecting them, or perhaps it isn't affecting them, who knows? I do think there are a growing number of men that are concerned about the impact of porn on their life and on the life of others. I think a big shift happens, as men start to think about becoming fathers.
Mm-hmm.
They think, oh, what if I have a little girl? Like,
mm-hmm. And you recently became a father, right?
Well, so we had we lost the baby actually in October. And that was difficult in a lots of different ways. But I do think the process of going on this evolution and crossing this threshold of, wow, I'm going to become a dad here. I feel like for me, that really made me want to start just acting differently, just thinking about
cleaning up your act and really becoming the man you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thinking beyond myself as a young man and thinking about myself as, I suppose, an adult, and who I want to be more in a much more conscious and intentional way.
Yeah. You mentioned in the article that you wrote on porn that stopping porn isn't just about quitting, it's about reclaiming your headspace. I'm curious what that means to you.
I think like what I've noticed is that, for the men that are struggling with and actually I think a lot of men would struggle to even call it a porn addiction. Like the word addiction is quite strong for a lot of people. It scares people to think that they are addicted to something. We only get, in the movies, we see addicts as people that live in doorways, and they're homeless and they're shooting
bent
up
over on the street in the dark alleyway kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So no one likes to think about themselves as an addict. I think a lot more of us are addicts to things like porn and social media than we might like to admit because of what technology has done to us.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're coming to terms with that. So I think what I've just realized is how much Headspace that does. It's like this silent drumbeat in men's lives. I think it's it's not
the
just
silent craving, just that kind of that hunger that's always there in the background.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think I get the sense that some men who develop a really strong addiction are genuinely like, they're, and I don't know this world as well as you do, like they're genuinely thinking, hey, when am I next going to watch it? They're really designing their whole life around it. I imagine if the addiction becomes very severe, I imagine for the vast majority of men, it's much more subtle than that. But I think it's, I remember I read a book years and years and years ago. It's like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's like an absolute classic thing that you'd probably read. I think a lot of young men read it when they're like 21 and they're thinking about, how
getting rich and
how they're
powerful. Yeah.
How they become a millionaire in the next 4 years or something. But I do remember reading that book, one of the first books I read written by a man where he talks about sex. And he was basically, one of the chapters is look like the pursuit of sex. If that's a constant pursuit of yours, it is going to hold you back. And it did resonate for me actually as a young man, because like many young men, when I was in my early 20s and I was single, I was constantly thinking like, who am I chatting up next? Who am I speaking to? Like, who's my next date or whatever. Like it did dominate, and it made me realize like, wow, this does take up a lot of my headspace. Like I believe the same thing is happening to men around porn. Like it's kind of like this hum in the back of their minds that is impacting, how they see the world, how they see women, and then just like practically how much time, like just time, I don't know. It depends what people are up to, like 2-3 hours a week, maybe 1 hour a week, yeah, I think, what impact is that actually having? Because it's not just the time consuming porn. It's like I don't know, it's maybe the time spent on Instagram reels, flicking through stupid videos of probably fucking 18-year-old girls dancing, that, like, what an absolute brain drain, that's just totally mindless time spent.
Yeah. Just the real way it can kind of consume your mind and consume your activities in terms of lusting after women, objectifying women, chasing after thirst traps on Instagram. I mean, it can really, it can take away a lot of your life energy. And that's what that Napoleon Hill book, the chapter on sex transmutation was really about, that it's an energy and, it's a resource, and you can either waste it or you can channel it and transmute it into something powerful.
Yeah.
Was it, when you started shifting your views on porn, was it hard for you to quit? Were there kind of moments of in and out, or was it a pretty easy transition of, hey, I don't want to do this anymore?
I think there was just like a lot of shame to kind of work through. And then, it's funny, like, even before coming on this pod, I thought, God, like, do I want to talk about this on a podcast? Like, is that, I was like, I was nervous because I think there is so much shame around it. And actually, like, talking to you here, it's nice to talk about this topic in such a normal way, because I think that's actually where we need to get to. Just like we talk about cigarettes or alcohol or cocaine, it's like, as a substance that, that people have been hooked on. And I remember I have friends, older friend, and he's an alcoholic in recovery. So he's not drank for, let's say, like 30 years. And, been to AA and done all of that, those steps, and been on that path. And he would always say to me, once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. Like, once you're an addict, you're an addict. And I'll be honest, I never got it. I actually thought, nah, that's not true. Like, you can change, you can, you don't have to label yourself in that way. I always thought that. And again, that word addict, like, it just didn't resonate. I found it too strong of a word for someone that I saw as such a nice guy. And I think what's actually helped me is around the topic of porn use is to see myself and not just myself, like many of us, as like recovering addicts. It's like we've grown up in this culture that has, conditioned us to see women and sex in this particular way. And we need to recover from that. And I don't feel ashamed about that. Like, I just think that I've done nothing. The 13-year-old James was doing nothing wrong. Like, he was just doing what he was kind of told.
Yeah. Right. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't like he was some malicious 13-year-old boy that wanted to ruin the world.
No way. Not like he was like sinister or strange. He was just a 13-year-old boy, like, discovering the world.
Was curious about sex and found something that made him feel good and was like, whoa, this makes me feel good. Let me do it again.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I just think seeing it like that has helped. And I suppose it's then made, it's given me the permission to just explore it like I would anything. Like, I eat too much sugar, probably. It'd probably be healthy if I explored my addiction to sugar, which I will.
Well, it's interesting because it's another huge topic also, that really impacts a lot of men, because it's something that a lot of men feel a little bit ashamed to admit, that, like, oh yeah, I'm kind of addicted to sugar and I feel bad about that. Body dysmorphia, all these kind of issues that we kind of have thought are more women's issues, like eating disorders and these kind of things, affect men in spades. And it's just something that we, similar to porn, we don't really talk about. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard for guys to open up and say, yeah, I feel ashamed of the fact that I, go home when no one's watching and order some cookies to eat, by myself, but I don't want anyone to see me eating them, but I'm addicted to it.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Social media addiction is another one,
Dating apps. Yeah. The transactional nature of relationships and sex.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's helped me just seeing it, quite like matter of factly and remove the shame from it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the reasons that your publication, like, I highly recommend people to go check it out, because it is just so matter of fact. Like, it's not, because as you mentioned, there are these kind of highfalutin, you didn't say highfalutin, but it's like there are these very, esoteric kind of like educational policy level, publications of these are the statistics of men. But I think we also just need more posts like yours, which are people just speaking from their own experience of, hey, here's something that I'm coming face to face with. Here's something I'm seeing a lot of the men in my life coming face to face with. Let's talk about it and let's get honest about how it's impacting us and impacting society.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's how we'll, reclaim the narrative around, men and what men experience. Everything from porn to drugs, alcohol, dating, work, all the many things. Like, I think if we can just, as men, lead that conversation ourselves, I believe we will continue to evolve. And it's crucial that it's men doing it. Like, it's really great to be having this conversation with you, like two guys just discussing, these topics very easily. Very easily.
Without shame.
Yeah, we're okay. Like, it's not been difficult to have this conversation, actually. It's felt really easy, and more men can do that, Doesn't mean it has to come on a podcast, but, you can...
Start small.
Yeah.
You don't have to blare it out to the world.
Drop your mate a message on WhatsApp, go for a walk, go for a coffee, go for a beer. Like, just bring stuff up and actually see how easy it is to connect as men together, because it is really easy. We're out of practice.
Yeah. And on that note, if I would give one piece of advice, one of the things I see all the time is that if you can be the one who takes that first courageous step by being vulnerable with a friend and saying, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing, often it gives permission to your friend to do the same. If you can be the one to say, man, I want to tell you something that's kind of on my mind. I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z. It gives permission for the other guy to open up also. So
totally.
Amazing. Well, man, it's been so good to finally connect and get you on the podcast. For all the listeners out there, I really do recommend checking out Jack on Substack, because it's just a great publication. Last question for you. If people want to get connected, where should they go? What should they check out?
So if you want to sign up to the Jack publication, it's jackcommunity.com. And then if you want to follow my writing specifically, then I'm most prolific on LinkedIn. And find me, connect with me, follow me on there, James Routledge.
Wonderful. All right. That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Unhooked. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.